Matt Chorley on Times Radio.
Very good morning to you. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio. 5 minutes to go until PMQs Unpacked. Get on the Times Radio YouTube channel right now, where you'll be able to watch along. Stephen was there first. He's in Taunton. Good morning from upstate New York, says Candia. Checking on in from Lee. Roger is in Gravesend. Lou is in Pennsylvania. Get on line to the YouTube channel now. Right now, we are turning the cameras on. The cameras are on. Comedian Geoff Norcott will join us live, along with Tim Shipman, to pause the action live from the House of Commons. A couple of bits of breaking news to bring you as you log on. There was a story around yesterday that HMRC was going to turn off its self-assessment helpline for 6 months of the year. So that was one way of dealing with the long queues. You just don't answer at all. But there's been a development. One of our money writers, Lily Russell-Jones, is here. Lily, what's happened?
Hello. So yesterday we heard that HMRC was planning to shut phone lines for self-assessment queries for 6 months of the year between April and September. All other callers were going to be directed to HMRC's web services. But today we've heard that they've changed the plan and the helplines will be open. I think people's tax affairs are very complicated. I think there was concern that sometimes your questions can't be answered very easily using AI. So common sense seems to have prevailed today and the phone lines will remain open.
It's being reported that its Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has intervened and told them to pause the changes. Clearly, he recognised it. Whatever the logic behind it, politically, this probably wasn't a great look either.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that HMRC, they trialled closing the phone lines earlier this year ahead of the tax deadline, and it really wasn't a very popular solution. And there was pushback yesterday from Harriet Baldwin, who's the chair of the Treasury Select Committee, and she said that it was a great shame that HMRC had decided to close phone lines. And there was also pushback from kind of tax experts and accountancy bodies who were concerned about taxpayers not being able to get the help that they need effectively.
And then there's been a U-turn. There we are. It was very, very swift as well. Lily, really good speech to you. Lily Russell-Jones there, senior money writer for The Times and The Sunday Times. That other bit of breaking news we were just bringing you, Leo Varadkar, the Irish Prime Minister, or Taoiseach, says he's going to stand down. We could go live now to Northern Ireland. Peter McVery from our sister station, U105, is there. Peter, what are you hearing?
Yeah, just lots of speculation this morning, Matt. There's a government cabinet meeting that was happening, and the Taoiseach is expected to have a press conference the next while and share a bit more detail, but he's expected to stand down both as Taoiseach and leader of the Fine Gael party before the next election. No date in the diary at the minute for the election in the Republic of Ireland, and this isn't expected at this stage to accelerate that. We are expecting an election probably in the next 12 to 15 months, but when it will come, we're not sure, and we don't think that this will preempt it just yet.
Oh, so why announce it now?
Not sure. Maybe he wants to they can get a successor in place. Maybe he is of the feel that if he's not going to lead them beyond the next general election, then there's no point in leading them into it. We don't know if there's any personal circumstances involved. Early days, Matt, but we'll be keeping an ear across it. It's not something I expected to hear today.
Good to speak to you. That's Peter McVery there from our sister station U105, keeping an eye on those reports that Leo Varadkar is to stand down as the Irish Prime Minister or Taoiseach. He became the youngest Taoiseach in Ireland in 2017 when he first took over as leader of Fine Gael. Plenty more of that, I'm sure, throughout the day here on Times Radio, as and when we get more details. But up next, it's PMQs Unpacked. It's the last one for 3 weeks, so as a special end-of-term treat, we're bringing in comedian Geoff Norcott. He's going to be here to pause the action live in the House of Commons. Tim Shipman is here as well. What will Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak possibly find to talk about? We'll find out next here on Times Radio.
On DAB, digital radio, on the Times Radio app, and on your smart speaker. Times Radio, the election station.
It's 12 o'clock. I'm Matt Chorley, and this is Times Radio. In a moment, PMQs Unpacked, but first a look at the headlines this lunchtime. Drivers at 16 train companies are going to strike again in April. Members of ASLEF are in a long-running disagreement over pay. The Chancellor said families will heave a sigh of relief that inflation has come down again to 3.4%. It was 4% in January. The Metropolitan Police has been asked to look into claims that the Princess of Wales had a confidentiality breached while she was a patient at a private London hospital. So according to a government minister, at least one staff member at the London clinic in Marylebone was said to have been caught trying to get access to Kate's medical notes. And the Rwanda bill returns to the House of Lords later. Early this week, MPs overturned 10 amendments put forward by peers. We'll have a full news roundup in an hour, but now live on Times Radio and on the Times Radio YouTube channel, it's time for this.
PMQs Unpacked on Times Radio. Unpacking the politics and cutting through the crossfire.
Order, order. I call Matt Chorley and Tim Shipman.
Yes, Tim Shipman is here for PMQs Unpacked. How are you, Tim?
Hello, Matthew. I'm very well.
And as a special end-of-term treat, because we're off now for 3 weeks, Geoff Norcott's here.
I'm a big fan of the show, genuinely. I don't watch it live anymore because I think you guys have realised that it's a form of entertainment, isn't it?
It's just for the lols.
Well, it's somewhere between soap opera, sport. There's sometimes a bit of politics there. I was supposed to be doing this the other week, and then I had a stomach bug. I don't know if you remember, and it was that really boring week. I've never been more delighted.
Yeah, you messaged me afterwards and said, I'm really pleased. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very.
We could probably have done with your help that week, though, I suspect.
It would have massively helped. So, what are your expectations?
Well, I'm hoping to see a lot of risky Sunak. Rishi Sunak saying that he won't be lectured by, but I hope that he changes it up a bit and uses other phrases and says, "Oh, that's a bit rich coming from you," or "Hark at him coming off all high and mighty." Hark at her, because he keeps using that phrase. He just needs to mix it up. So I'm looking forward to that. I wonder if Starmer might have one of his high noble weeks where he picks some cause like victims of the Great Fire of London. You know, it might be one of those weeks for him because I don't know if
serious.
Well, yeah. If he climbs into them a bit, there's a chance they might unite behind Sunak. So I'll be interested to see where he goes.
Does it feel like they're in the mood to unite behind Rishi Sunak, Tim?
Well, I would have thought one of the more interesting bits about this is whether he can cheer them up now, because the more important meeting for Rishi Sunak is not the one with Keir Starmer, it's the one at 5 o'clock where he has to go and meet all his backbench MPs. And if he's done well at PMQs, that meeting's probably likely to go a little bit more smoothly for him. So I imagine there'll be some fruity rhetoric to get all that noise behind him.
How serious is the threat to him? Because we keep being told something changed last week. But the truth is, there's a lot of people who should have realised they were probably going to lose previously, woke up to that fact. But recognising that they're heading for a loss based on the polls doesn't necessarily mean, so therefore we need to change the leader.
What was that line about, it's deadly important but not serious, or the other way round, or something like that? I mean, yes, there's lots of it. There's unsolicited calls coming into journalists saying, up with this, we will not put. You just wait. We're about to do something. I mean, my personal expectation would be that I think it's unlikely that they move against him before the local elections, not least because somebody else will then have to carry the can in the local elections, and it would be a bit nuts to want to do that. You'd want to pin that on an outgoing Prime Minister if he is outgoing. But call me a cynic, but I've been doing this for 23 years now, and I've had a lot of calls with Tory MPs over the years who are about to defenestrate their leader, and we all have to acknowledge that they do get round to it eventually, but it doesn't. It tends not to come in the first, second, or third wave of the threats, and I'd say we're in about wave 2 at the moment.
So sometimes ago, yeah. Lots of people already watching along on the YouTube channel in Guildford and Minnesota, West Sussex, Weardale, Sherwood Forest, Leicester. So get online if you want to know and let us know what you think about what is happening in the House of Commons. Is Tim Shipman, Geoff Norcott. We're going live to the House of Commons now. It's question number 1 from Keir Starmer.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for his words in welcoming Vaughan Gething to his post as First Minister of Wales? As the first black leader of any European government, it's a historic moment that speaks to the progress and values of modern-day Wales. Yeah. And I also pay tribute to Mark Drakeford for his long, steady service in Wales. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, violent prisoners released early because the Tories wrecked the criminal justice system. 3,500 small boat arrivals already this year because the Tories lost control of the borders. Yeah. The NHS struggling to see people because the Tories broke it. Millions paying more on their mortgages. A budget that hit pensioners. A £46 billion hole in his sums. Why is the Prime Minister so scared to call an election?
Mr. Speaker, as I said in January, my working assumption is that the election will be in the second half of the year. But I must say, I thought that out of everybody, he'd actually be the most grateful, Mr. Speaker, because he's now actually got time to come up with a plan for Britain. We're all looking forward to finally seeing it.
Was that it? Was that his response? I mean, he seems in a better mood, Rishi. He's got the inflation news. I'd imagine he must have just wept a bit because it's been several successive weeks where nothing's gone right. But I suppose it was a slightly scattergun question from Starmer, and then sort of saying that you should be grateful. It's one of those where it's clippable, isn't it?
But I suppose the very slight implication of his response, Tim, is that you've got time to come up with a plan for Britain because you're going to be the next Prime Minister.
Yes.
Well, yes, but their attack will be, these guys. We've got a plan and they haven't. No one will really need to know what their plan is. It's the idea that you have one that's most important. I mean, Labour have been building up for this election attack for some time. I mean, Starmer and Starmer's team have been convinced that the Prime Minister is going to call an election in May. Those of us speaking to people in Number 10 have been trying to tell them this is nonsense since the end of December. But last week they were teeing it up. They sent out a message to all of their campaigners saying the government's going to announce an election on Monday, and they just wanted to make it look like Sunak had bottled it. Now, Sunak did have a wobble last week about whether or not to do it, but the plan has always been towards the end of the year, and they're just trying to sort of... Labour is probably more prepared for an election than Tories at the moment. Tories don't have a manifesto. They only began meetings about it last week. So, this is sort of... I would expect more of this. It was interesting at the start, though, wasn't it? He did, we always say he doesn't pull everything together. He's almost pulling it all together in question one. That felt the last bit.
Yeah, that was
number 6.
That was what was odd about it. You say the Tories don't have a manifesto. I sort of got this theory that Labour could actually fight the election without a manifesto, as just kind of like a high status move, and say we don't even need this. It's been that bad. We don't even need this.
We've tried having a plan. Look what happened.
Yeah, we'll beat you without a plan. Just one little note. Annalise Dodd sitting over Starmer's left shoulder. No Angela Rayner, who does generally look unimpressed with everything that Starmer says. Although Annalise Dodd is not exactly a smile fest herself, but that was notable too.
Well done for spotting Annalise Dodd. Extra points. Extra points for that. Maybe she's off. Maybe Angela Rayner's off reading the Michael Ashcroft book about her.
Studying the small
one of her houses.
One of her mortgages.
Yes, very good. Right, let's go back to the House of Commons. This is question 2 for Keir Starmer.
We're ready. Just call it. Just call it. But, Mr. Speaker, he talks a plan. Let's just take his Rwanda policy. When they first announced this gimmick, they claimed it would settle tens of thousands of people. The Home Office then whittled it down to a mere 300. 4 times that number have already arrived this month, and the backlog stands at 130,000. Can the Prime Minister see any flaw in his plan to deport less than 1% of that backlog?
Mr. Speaker, since I became Prime Minister, the number of small boat crossings are actually down by over a third, Mr. Speaker. And that's because we've doubled National Crime Agency funding, we've increased the illegal enforcement rates by 70%, we've closed 7,500 bank accounts, deported 24,000 illegal migrants, and processed over 112,000 cases, more than at any point in the last 2 decades, Mr. Speaker. And it's crystal clear, as we're seeing from the Labour Party's opposition in this House, while we're committed to stopping the boats, the Labour Party would keep them coming.
It was interesting. If Starmer's got a comic instinct in him, he said we've closed 7,500 bank accounts. He'd go, well, those are probably businesses that have had to shut down. Yeah. But I suspect he won't do that. But there was a slightly strange moment when he stood up, when he said, "Oh, we're ready. Oh, we're ready." There was a little hint of Ed Miliband.
Just a hint of Zippy again.
It's me doing an impression of Matt Ford doing an impression of Josh Widdicombe, I think. But it was just a touch of Ed Miliband toffee nuts. Remember? Yeah. Oh, I'm tough enough. Oh, we're ready. Don't worry about that.
Oh, we are ready. just call it. Rishi Sunak there once again demonstrating that his record on illegal migration would be much better if he abandoned the Rwanda idea.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think the significance of the Rwanda thing, if they get anywhere with it, if they can start showing planes taking off, even if they've only got 5 people on board, you can sort of say, well, this was a goal and we went and obtained it and the other lot didn't want to bother, and it acts as it acts as a deterrent and all the rest of it. The purpose of it really is as a political sort of symbol now rather than the specifics of it. And this kind of works for both sides because it allows Starmer to say the whole system's a shambles, it doesn't work and your numbers don't work. And it allows Sunak to say, yeah, but you're not really interested in this and you wouldn't do any of it and the numbers would get even worse. And I think both of those propositions have a grain of truth in them.
And it could, it's one of those issues where there is a difference, which on most issues they're just sort of arguing over
who would do it better.
Who would do it better?
What they would do is actually different.
Yeah.
And Starmer's a bit coy about that.
I think Rwanda is now in the territory. Do you remember that point in Brexit where you would say the word and people go... I think Rwanda is a slightly less sexy version of that. I think it's become a slight embarrassment. And I don't know what they think. Is they think they get people on planes and then suddenly all the Conservative switchers will go, all right, I'm sorry for doubting you, we're going to vote for you. That's not what's going to happen. But like you say, it's sort of a convenient political battleground for the time being. And
there is also a problem, is the extent to which voters are just switched off from even listening to the Tories. And so even if they do start, if they get round to saying, oh, look, it's working, but it's possible that nobody's taken any notice.
Well, people just do a cost analysis. When that first flight goes, they'll be able to go, right, this is how much it costs per person. You could have stayed at Sandals in Barbados for a year for this. So I don't know if
not
they
for £8,000 you couldn't. You're lucky to get one night there for that.
Yeah, very good. Right, let's go back to the House Comments. It's PMQs Unpacked with me, Matt Chorley, Tim Shipman and comedian Geoff Norcott. This is question 3 from Keir Starmer.
The tragedy is we know the Prime Minister doesn't even believe in the Rwanda gimmick. He tried to stop funding it, but he's now so diminished that his entire focus is stopping his MPs holding the sword of Damocles above his head. Perhaps even literally in the case of the Leader of the House.
That's Penny Mordaunt's
his great hope
famous sword carrier.
is to have played his party with a couple of empty planes, praying they won't notice when the flights stop going, the boat's still coming, and the costs keep mounting. How has he managed to spend £600 million of taxpayer money on a gimmick to deport 300 people?
Mr. Speaker, it's crystal clear. Not only does the Labour Party not have a plan to fix this issue, but the truth is they don't actually care about fixing this issue. When he talks about the gangs, when we gave the police new powers to crack down on the people smuggling gangs, he spent months campaigning and voting against it. But thanks to our new laws, 900 criminals have been arrested. 450 have been convicted, serving over 370 years behind bars. If it was up to him, those criminals would still be out on our streets, Mr. Speaker. And the truth is, if he wasn't the Labour leader, he'd still want to be their lawyer.
Wow.
Punchy stuff. I was thinking he's going to mention the lawyer thing, and then it seemed for a brief millisecond that he wouldn't, and he went in there. I mean, just on a style note, Starmer reads almost exclusively from his notes, and if PMQs has one value, it's to give the British public an insight. How nimble are you? How agile for you? And he sometimes comes off a little bit like somebody doing their GCSE oral. It's a bit. He literally his fingers follow the words on the page, and Sunak has got a lot of faults and stuff, but he does give at least some sense of spontaneity in his responses.
It was interesting. So his joke about the sword carrier.
It's completely wrong, the joke.
What, carrying the sword? Oh,
well,
go on then.
Starmer said that Sunak wants to stop his backbenchers holding the sword of Damocles over his head. No, he doesn't. He wants them to hold on to it. Because once they let go, it's going to cut his head off. So Starmer got that completely the wrong way around. But Annalise Dodds loved the joke. Po-faced Annalise Dodds was chuckling away as if Starmer had really hit the mother load.
Penny Mordaunt didn't look like she enjoyed the joke.
No. I mean, Penny Mordaunt is a very interesting character. She is quite personable. She's, to the average punch in the street, highly charismatic and looks like a normal person compared with a lot of these Tories. A lot of her MP colleagues will say they just don't get much back when they talk to her. There's not a lot of humour and interaction and small talk and all the stuff that sort of greases the wheels of Westminster. And she's one of those people whose public image seems very different from her private image.
Somebody actually, this wasn't meant as an insult. Somebody said that it's a bit like Boris Johnson, who has this reputation of being colourful, gregarious in public.
Yeah.
But actually
he's a brooding
soul
in private. Yeah.
Well, she froze a bit in the leadership election. I mean, they all froze a bit in that leadership election.
Including the winners.
But yeah, she didn't offer much of. I mean, we often see those clips of her kind of taking the sword to the SNP at the dispatch box, and she gives the impression of somebody with real character. But yet, at the point where she had a chance to make a case, she didn't really do it. But I mean, look, I know maybe this isn't the right thing you're supposed to say in 2024, but the hair. The hair is incredible.
She's got a fabulous head of hair.
It's the most consistent hair in the public life. And Rishi's got...
No, I'm going to disagree with that. Ben Bradshaw. Ben Bradshaw's got the best hair in the Commons.
He is good. He delivers. Rishi, I mean, in fairness, Starmer, but I heard the other week that there was some argument really as whether or not he had good or bad hair.
Yeah.
It's a bit overmoosed.
Yeah, he's overmoosed. He should let it all... Matthew Powers has been writing in the Times today about we shouldn't be using shampoo at all. Maybe that's where Keir Starmer should go.
Is he one of those people who once went 6 weeks without washing his hair and it cleaned itself?
30 years he hasn't used shampoo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's fine once you get through the first sheep. I remember when he did this to start with. It smells of sheep dip, I remember him writing, for the first 6 weeks. Do not try this at home.
I'm not sure this
if you
is the
have
moment.
actual people living with you.
I don't think this is the moment for Keir Starmer to stop washing his hair.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the right moment,
Stick with the mousse. Right, well, we've covered a lot of ground there. Let's go back. This is question number 4 from Keir Starmer.
Speaker, I've prosecuted more people smugglers than he's had helicopter rides, and that's a lot. And this, I've done it. Rwanda gimmick is going to cost the taxpayer £2 million for every one of his 300 people that they deport. And I know the Prime Minister likes to spend a lot on jet setting, but that's some plane ticket. It's the cost of Tory chaos, and it's working people who are paying the price. The man he made his immigration minister let the cat out of the bag when he said the Prime Minister's symbolic flights will not provide a credible deterrent. And we know the Prime Minister himself thought it wouldn't work. If the people selling this gimmick don't believe in it, why should the country?
Mr. Speaker, he's very keen to talk about who he prosecuted. He's a bit less keen to talk about when he defended Hizbut Tahrir, Mr. Speaker. But when it comes to this question of how to deal with people who are here illegally, his values are simply not those of the British people. After all, this is the person who campaigned to stop the deportation of foreign dangerous criminals, Mr. Speaker. A dangerous criminal was jailed for dealing Class A drugs after he fought to keep him here. A gangmaster was convicted of carrying a knife after he fought to keep him here. So whether it's representing terrorists or campaigning for criminals, it's clear whose side he's on, and it's not the British people.
Wow. Lots of people on the YouTube channel spotting helicopter.
Yes.
It was quite... There was a joke in there somewhere about... I've prosecuted more people smugglers than he's had helicopter rides, and that's a lot.
Isn't a helicopter? You know, when children can't say certain words like hollybobs, and they can't if they can't say Elizabeth, they say Lilibeth.
Yeah,
Maflingo is my favourite of my daughters.
What's that?
The pink, bird.
Pink one-legged birds.
One-legged birds, Maflingos. Just thought I'd share that.
I'd like to... I mean, both of them were fluffing lines there in a way. There is a real end-of-term feel to this because actually they're both in their political safe space, prosecuting ideas they've rehearsed over several weeks. You've got no plan to bring down the boats. You used to represent Hizbut Tahrir. This is it's almost choreographed, actually.
One interesting thing I noticed is what it's saying Rwanda gimmick a lot.
Yes.
So that's obviously the word in the trying to land.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer seems to be acknowledging, he's talking about now the price for every one of those people you deport, that it's going to cost only 300 people when you deported. He appears to be acknowledging now that the flights are going to take off.
Some people might actually take off.
What he's not doing is saying, you know, it's 600 million and no one is ever going to leave.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, we don't know that that's the case, but if this bill is about to ping pong between the Commons and the Lords this week and possibly into next.
And what they don't want is in a fortnight's time, if the flights took, well, they won't be here, in a month's time when they're back at PMQs, if flights have taken off, they don't want Rishi Sunak saying.
So,
3 weeks ago,
victory.
you said it wouldn't happen.
How patient do you think Rishi Sunak will be with mentioning inflation? Do you think that'll be the question 6 thing? Because he must be desperate to mention it, even though a lot of people argue you either give blame for when it goes up and blame, credit for when it comes down. It's either both or neither. But I guess Starmer will want to avoid giving him a half volley to mention that.
I mean, I think actually it's a measure of sort of how reasonably well Sunak's doing, that he hasn't yet felt the need to play that card. And the argument about Starmer, that these are not the values of the British people, I suspect if your average poll would show that is the case. The problem Sunak's got is the British people, are they listening to him anymore? People do have their doubts about Starmer, but they've pretty much given up on the Tory party.
And, it's the Tories,
and that's Sunak's challenge, to get back into the conversation somehow. And Prime Minister's questions is not going to accomplish that, but what it probably does is means he gets a slightly easier time at 5 o'clock from his own MPs.
Which is the most important thing in terms of, once you're in the Theresa May realm of just getting to the end of the day.
Well, and get into the sort of period of where they can't get at you.
Lots of you get lots of helicopters on the YouTube channel. Someone else has also just WhatsApped in, so they've just discovered the YouTube app on my Sky Q box, says Lee. So you can now see a giant terracotta mat and the rest of us. So you can actually watch it on your telly. So there we are.
It's better than the camouflage you had on last week.
I can't, honest to God, I can't win. You've got a shacket on. Everyone's wearing a shacket.
Yeah, but only one of us looks like we're going to a 90s creative advertising meeting.
Well, if you want to see what my jacket looks like, you need to go online to the YouTube channel. Let's go back to the House of Commons now. Question number 5 from Keir Starmer.
It's genuinely sad to see him reduced to this nonsense. And let's take another example that I started with. After 14 years of Tory chaos in the prison system, the Justice Secretary is reduced to begging the Prime Minister either to send fewer offenders to prison or to release them even earlier. I must say I've got sympathy for anyone trying to get an answer out of the Prime Minister. So what's it going to be? Fewer criminals behind bars in the first place, or more released early onto our streets? Which is it?
Mr. Speaker, thanks to our record and plan, violent crime has fallen by 50%, Mr. Speaker. We've recruited more police officers, given them more powers, and kept serious offenders in prison for longer. What's his record? He voted against greater protection for our emergency workers, opposed tougher sentences for violent criminals, and failed to give police the powers they need. It would be back to square one with Labour, soft on crime and soft on criminals.
Well, there we are, soft on crime and soft on criminals. So Keir Starmer has now described Rishi Sunak as being reduced and diminished.
Yes, it's a bit heightist, isn't it?
It's a little bit smuggling in.
Diminutive will come next. And also he's been reading his Sunday Times, because we introed the big read at the weekend on Alex Chalk losing his rag with Downing Street over why they can't make up their minds about how they're going to ease prison numbers. And I'm sure the Justice Secretary is listening very closely to the Prime Minister's answer there, and he still won't know what they're going to be doing.
In terms of noise behind them, one thing that's changed in the last few weeks is that Starmer tends to get a fairly unified noise from his MPs now, and Sunak gets less noise, less support, which is bad enough. But if you could still consider, they've got a hell of a lot more MPs still.
Yeah.
They've still got three. What's the number?
3, 4, 8.
I mean, it probably goes down. There's like a ticker that goes down, like the doomsday clock. Week on
it's like
week.
the opposite of a Blue Peter totaliser.
Yeah, but it's still a hell of a lot more than the opposition benches. And if you just look at even the front bench, there just seems to be, they look, bored's not quite the word, but they look like they want to get out of there as soon as possible.
Now, somebody else asked a question, who is sitting next to Rishi Sunak? And I've been trying to place her.
Me too.
And I can't.
Penny Mordaunt's on the other side.
Yeah, and there's
it looks a bit like someone dropped him for a WI meeting.
Kemi Braden's there.
But,
I think it was Women Inequalities, but it's not a Women Inequalities minute. I think it might be a whip. Maybe she was standing in.
How much notice do you think they get? Because immediately you're going to be on camera a lot. You know, whether you need to
If you're going to be on camera, you want your best jacket on.
You want your terracotta jacket on.
My sister has messaged in and she says she likes the terracotta jacket. It's nice and bright.
There we are. little bit of spring colour.
No, a dash of. It's a beautiful thing, but I need something slimming, mate.
People now
I don't think you're alone
on the YouTube channel talking about how Lindsay Hoyle's lost his confidence. He's barely spoken. We had a tiny bit of him there because he ballsed up last week, didn't he? When he didn't call Diane Abbott.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Actually.
That was bad. Is it like
and just like you're supposed to be there to create moments and respond to the moving events. It was, I mean, for all the criticisms of John Bercow, it is vanishingly unimaginable to think that he would not have called Diane Abbott last week.
Yeah.
You know that time of your school when a teacher got in trouble and everyone knew that the teacher was in trouble? It was never quite the same for them after that. And he is. I mean, there's been a couple of key moments where he's just been not very good at being the Speaker of the House of Commons. And that's a hard, it's hard enough to sort of, it's hard for the two leaders to stand up. But his competence is definitely under review.
Well, let's go back. Let's see who comes out of this last exchange most confident. Will Rishi Sunak be able to smuggle a mention of inflation in, regardless of the question? It's the big test.
Yes.
Let's go back to the House of Commons. This is question number 6 from Keir Starmer.
You can see why he doesn't want an election, why his party have lost faith in, why half his cabinet are lining up to replace him. No answers, no plan, no clue. And the Prime Minister has never had the courage to stand up to his party. So let me help him out and say to them what he wishes he could. The mortgage mayhem, the waiting list, the criminals walking free, they are the costs of Tory chaos. And if they can't bring themselves to stop the endless games and gimmicks, stop putting themselves before country, they should pack up, go home, and waste somebody else's time. It wasn't that difficult, was it, Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, he talks...
Prime Minister. Oh, Lindsay Hall's up again.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about his ideas, but we're 2 weeks on from the budget. The Shadow Chancellor found time to make a 1-hour speech last night, and we still don't know how they're going to pay for their £28 billion black hole. But while he tries to talk down Britain and the progress that we are making, today's news shows that the plan is working. Inflation down, Mr. Speaker. Energy bills down. Wages up, pensions up, and taxes cut by £900. And that is the choice. Higher taxes and back to square one with Labour, or tax cuts and real change with the Conservatives.
Well, we got there in the end.
Stick that on your poster.
I completely lost the thread of what Keir Starmer was doing there.
And you know what was unfortunate for him is straight afterwards he said, well, see, it wasn't that hard, was it? Well, you made it look hard, mate. You were struggling to get the words out.
He was trying to suggest that that's what Sunak should say to his own MPs.
But it wasn't. But then it was a mess of.
But then it wasn't what
it was like a
Sunak would
Tory
say to his own
lines.
MPs, because Sunak wouldn't talk about mortgage mayhem, would he?
Yeah, and it just went on for too long, and I forgot that he was role-playing.
It was sort of meta within meta. It kind of lost itself.
I got quite excited when he said that. I'll tell you what he'd like to say to his MPs. I thought we might get a swear word.
You thought it was going to be shorter.
and it was a bit
finished with off.
and it was a bit of a salad. But Rishi, yeah, I mean, the problem for everybody is that some of the things that he's talking about, there is a better economic story to tell a little bit, but the feed through for that for people is there's going to be such a lag. They're saying, interest rates might come down. All right, so when you end your current inflated deal, hey, in 2026 you might start feeling the love. Food prices are still going up. So all of these are green shoots that nobody can yet see in bloom.
And then if they do, will anyone give them the credit? Because you can't simultaneously say all the bad stuff has nothing to do with us. But now that now things are looking better, it's all down to us.
Was that question 6? Was that the last one?
That was the last one. Sorry.
That was the last one. Yeah, because I suppose the thing for Rishi is if he'd have said inflation at question 5, then Starmer could have said, well, will you then take the blame for it going up to 11%? Yeah. So that might have been why he was quite disciplined in leaving it to the last one.
Hold it back till afterwards. Well, will the backbench contributions be any better? What do you think, Tim?
Oh, I don't know. I thought that was pretty deep. I thought that was pretty lively.
And
Starmer did well enough, and Sunak did enough to keep them off his back, I think.
And in terms of its value beyond it being treating it like entertainment, it does give us an insight into the strategies that they're pursuing. The Tories are going to keep saying that Labour don't have a plan. Labour now appear to be acknowledging that some flights might take off to Rwanda, but they're just dismissing it as an expensive gimmick. But then Labour are accusing the Tories of having no answers, no plan, no clue. So maybe the answer is that nobody has a manifesto or a plan going into the next election.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought, but performance-wise, both of them were reasonable, but it did feel very much like safe space, well-rehearsed. You know, like when you're doing a knock-up in tennis, like no one was really simply smashing any aces. Like, come on, old boy. It's the last week of term. Nobody wants to be working up a sweat today.
Working class hero Geoff Norcott out on the tennis courts.
I grew up in Wimbledon, mate. I grew up in Wimbledon. I used to bunk in, watch
Yeah,
McEnroe and Fleming.
Right.
I genuinely did, yeah. Well, after 4 p.m, they used to open the gates for people to come out, and we would go in and just
get in.
And the posh people were delighted about that. Kids from a council estate walking around licking strawberries.
And the greatest double act in tennis, as we know, was John McEnroe and anyone else.
Yeah, pretty much.
Very good. Right, Lara Spirit's going to be here in a minute with the best of the rest. I imagine we might get a little bit of Stephen Flynn content. We'll do that next here on Times Radio.
When you're a Caxton travel card, that's your travel money sorted. No worries, no stresses. No transaction fees abroad, meaning you can relax. Find peace of mind, great exchange rates, and get your travel money sorted. Apply for your free Caxton travel card. Search Caxton Card. Conditions apply.
A little story is easy to share. We can meet pink unicorns, pirates, and bears. We can even be pilots, fly to faraway places. The magic is waiting, so let's open the pages.
A little story could make a big difference, but 1 in 5 children say they don't own a book. So we've provided over 160 million books since 2013, and we won't stop there. McDonald's. Change a little, change a lot. 19.2% of respondents from a survey of 6,896 children aged 5 to 8, National Literacy Trust 2023.
Listen to Jane Garvey and Fee Glover's unique perspective on the day's stories. Every Monday to Thursday afternoon from 3.
Matt Chorley on Times Radio with Revolut. The future of money is here. Download the app for free now. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Very good afternoon. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio, live on the radio and on the Times Radio YouTube channel. We're going to bring you the best of the rest of the minute from the House of Commons. But in the last half an hour, the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach, has announced he'll step down before the next general election in the Republic of Ireland. He'll also step down as party leader. Here is a bit of what he's been saying in the last few minutes.
I know this will come as a surprise to many people and a disappointment to some, and I hope at least you will understand my decision. I know that others will, how shall I put it, cope with the news just fine. That is the great thing about living in a democracy. There's never a right time to resign high office. However, this is as good a time as any. My reasons for stepping down are both personal and political. Most of all, I believe the re-election of this three-party government would be the right thing for the future of our country, continuing to take us forward, protecting all that's been achieved and building on it. But after careful consideration and some soul-searching, I believe that a new Taoiseach and a new leader will be better placed than me to achieve that.
That was Leo Varadkar in the last few minutes, setting out why he's standing down. Tim, what's your assessment of it? Because mainly because of Brexit, but he's been probably more involved in the British political question than a lot of his predecessors.
Well, yeah, and probably more so than anyone probably since Charles Hockey, who was around doing the Anglo-Irish Agreement and all of that kind of stuff when we were growing up. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously concerned that Sinn Féin might win the election in the south, and thinks that standing aside might be the way to stop that. Don't forget, I mean, he's been around at the top of Irish politics for 7 years, which is a long time when you're working intensively, and we've had 4 prime ministers in that time. So, you know, he's done a stint. You know, I mean, my reflection as someone who's written a lot about Brexit, and if I may be so bold, there'll be some of this in my upcoming books. But Varadkar was quite an interesting guy. He was quite difficult to Theresa May. He stuck to the backstop plan that the EU had signed with her in 2017. He didn't really want to water that down. But when Boris Johnson came along and looked like he might end up going for no deal, Varadkar realised that it made sense to do business. And actually what's interesting about that deal was, his relationship with May was quite cold and distant, and he and Boris Johnson in some ways didn't have a lot in common. But when they got together, they kind of got on, and it shows what two leaders who get in a room together and look each other in the eye and push things a little bit further than probably either of their teams wanted, were able to walk out and say, actually, we've done some business here, and that was what got the withdrawal agreement over the line. So in terms of Britain, Varadkar started as a thorn in our side, and actually by the end of that process, it was his relationship with Boris Johnson that kind of got the first phase of Brexit done. So we've got reason to be grateful to him.
And it's interesting, the point you make as well. I mean, this is hard politics. There's a general election coming. If you go back to 2016, Fine Gael came first. Sinn Féin were a distant third. The last election, they came third, Fine Gael. And in the polling now looks like Sinn Féin are well ahead of anyone.
I think most people expect Sinn Féin to win, and this looks like an attempted, if not a final throw of the dice, certainly a significant throw of the dice to try and recast things and make that less sort of a walkover.
I don't know if it's a slight fallout from the Sturgeon resignation, but when he said personal and political reasons, I've now got in my mind that there'll be a mobile home, there'll be police on a lot. I'm sure his reasons are pure.
The police are currently putting up a gazebo in his front garden. Exactly. To be clear, there's no suggestion for legal reasons that there's any gazebos in his front garden.
No, but it's still funny to watch Nicola Sturgeon's resignation statement, even now.
God,
I'm so tired. tired of feeling the hot breath on the back of your neck.
Let's talking of the SNP, Tim.
Yes.
Lara Spirit's here for the best of the West. How are you, Lara?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Overall, how were they?
They were good.
Yeah?
They were good. I mean, we're getting into the stage nearish to a possible election where there's quite a lot of these party questions from Tory MPs who are forecast to lose their seats, and Rishi Sunak giving them a kind of bit of a rallying cry. But Stephen Flynn, where we're going first, obviously that does not apply to him. This is part of those questions that we've heard a lot from Flynn this year, and I would actually say it's the best example of it so far, which is to say it's a question more aimed at the Labour front bench than it is aimed at Rishi Sunak. So take a listen to this.
Mr. Speaker, with his backbenchers looking for a unity candidate to replace him, which of the now numerous born-again Thatcherites on the Labour front bench does he believe best fits the bill?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was surprising to hear all this talk about the 1970s from the Shadow Chancellor in particular. But then if you see what's happening in places like Birmingham, where taxes are going up by 21%, Mr. Speaker, services are being cut, whether it's social care, children's services, or indeed in some streets, literally the lights are being turned off. It was unsurprising why they're talking about the 70s, and I can just say what they've done to Birmingham, the Conservatives will never let them do to Britain.
Rishi Sunak was thrown there by the fact it was quite a good joke.
Well, Stephen Flynn's good. He's a good operator, and I think what he demonstrates is that there is a value to questions that are pointed and have an economy of language. He's really come in and upped their game since Ian Blackford. I think the thing with the hands in the pocket, someone's got to throw him off of that, because that's obviously his safe space. So I think they've got to start saying, right, pockets. Give him a nickname, Pocket Plonker, something like that, just to throw him out.
Pocket Plonker.
Yeah, just whisper it. It's very childish.
He came in once, and I asked him why he does it. Puts his hand in his pockets, and he says because it winds up the Tories. They think they do shout, but maybe they're not shouting Pocket Plonker.
Well, no. He's what is he? Not yet 40?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, and I think that sometimes some of the other, like the Tory and the Labour MPs, must look at that and think, if we had a communicator like that, what would be possible?
The was it Al Moe when he was in? Said that the putting the hands in the pocket was a stand-up trick. It made you look relaxed.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't.
Yeah, I normally scratch the top of my head. I sort of come out in hives. It's slightly. It's a slightly hide behind the curtain. That kind of thing.
How do you communicate to the audience you're completely in control?
I suppose there's the barroom lean on the mic stand. It's I'm just a raconteur and a Weatherspoons. That's what. That's my shtick.
Yeah, just leaning very casually.
Yeah, but you can quickly look too casual. So there is a sweet spot in the middle where you look like you're taking it seriously enough. And I just think, obviously, I'm not an SNP supporter, but I think he's done a cracking job for them.
There we are. We enjoyed that one, Lara. What else have you got for us?
We are going to Angela Richardson, who is a Conservative MP in Guildford. I think another of these Tory questions that, well, I mean, they are Tory questions, I was about to say, they come from others, but that focus on planning, and particularly this question as to whether or not there should be homes or other developments in their constituencies. And Angela Richardson forecast in current polling to lose her seat to the Lib Dems, so I think quite interesting to hear who Rishi Sunak includes in his answer.
Just before we go to that, I can bring you some breaking news. We've worked out who it is who's sitting next to Rishi Sunak. It is the Conservative MP Felicity Buchan.
I'm still Googling here.
She's the MP for Kensington.
Tried every whip.
She is the Housing Minister.
Of course she is.
Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Housing and Homelessness.
That name sounds like a Tory algorithm name generator for a female Tory MP. Was it Felicity Buchan?
Felicity Buchan.
So many.
40 I thought it was a whip. That was
I was ready to jump in.
Did you know who it was?
No.
Oh.
I'm literally Googling pictures of women whips.
40 minutes it took. And honestly, the things that listeners have been in touch with today, correcting me about the population of the Orkneys, whether or not it's the Orkney or Orkneys, whether or not you should put your dishwasher on at midnight. Nobody could recognise. Anyway, Felicity Buchan, there she is. So sorry to interrupt you, Lara, and that you're
didn't interrupt me. No, it's absolutely fine.
We can now go to the House of Commons to Angela Richardson's question and some Felicity Buchan action.
Mr Speaker, the people of the eastern villages of Guildford, the Clandons, the Horseleys, Effingham, Ripley, Send and Ockham have had enough. Unwanted development and villages taken out of the Greenbelt without promised infrastructure is why I've been calling for an immediate review of the local plan for the last 3 years. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that Labour's promise of concreting over the Greenbelt, even against the wishes of local MPs, would simply add insult to injury?
Well, Mr Speaker, unlike both the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party, who believe in top-down targets that decimate the Greenbelt, we believe in local people having a say over their local communities, which is why we are committed to protecting and enhancing the Greenbelt. The national planning policy includes strong protections to safeguard this important land. I know her local plan is currently under review by the council, who have indicated they'll be updating it, and I hope the honourable member and her constituents engage with that process to help shape future Guildford for future generations.
Oh, you nearly fluffed the carefully rewritten local. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh quite so heartily at her.
Well, there were some fruity names as well. The Horseleys. Be careful. Effingham and the Horseleys.
Well, I don't know, is that families? Are they local families? The Horseleys have had enough.
I think there must be a great Horsley and a little Horsley, or an East Horsley and a West Horsley.
We had the Horseleys for supper, and they've had enough.
Horsley on the nays. They've had enough. It did just feel like a letter to a newspaper in real life form.
With a circulation of about 200.
You're right, there is an East Horsley. So I can only assume there might be a West Horsley. It's home to Horsley and Effingham Junction railway stations.
But don't you feel like the people of those towns have generally just had enough of everything? So you just meet them in the morning. How are you? I've had enough.
Yeah.
I've quite frankly had enough. I have a very privileged life, but you know what? It's getting me down.
I don't think you move to Effingham unless you've had enough, do you?
Oh, here's some interesting trivia. Horsley Towers is a Gothic mansion designed by Sir Charles Barry, who later designed the Houses of Parliament. That's the sort of thing that interests you, Lara.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
as our A to Z.
Live broadcast from the top of the tower.
Yeah, go to Horsley.
With the people of Effingham down below waving their fists. We must be heard.
Is that enough of that, Lara?
Yeah, unless you want another one.
Not really.
Okay, thank
Well, we've
you,
got a choice. We either do that or we can plug Jeff's thing.
Let's plug Jeff's thing.
Okay. Are you you're still touring, aren't you?
Oh, I always tour.
No,
Touring until the end of April. I'm in Crewe on Friday and Shrewsbury on Saturday. But yeah, the documentary.
Let's talk about the documentary, though.
Hawking it.
Yeah. So you went out to find out if a degree is still worth it. Is university really worth it? Here's a clip.
And when I went to uni, it was a time to explore choices, make mistakes, have fun. And now, proud dad myself, I've started thinking about what uni might be like for Geoff Jr. And from what I'm hearing, things ain't great.
Lecturers have been striking, and 69% of graduates feel their degree wasn't even worth it.
So I should be putting away a bit of money now so that Geoff Jr. footsteps, but I also need a new motor. So I'm going to hit the road to find out where my money's best spent and start doing some research.
So what's the answer?
Well, first of all, I've got to say my son's name isn't Geoff Jr.
Well, I was going to ask that.
Thank
I thought,
the Lord
maybe,
for that.
I don't want to, there was just a tiny part of it that thought maybe he is, and it would be awkward if I thought that was funny.
Well, you know, the film, I mean, it's an hour long, and we're trying to get conversations going. But ultimately, I suppose I did come out of it sceptical about the value. Not saying that there's no value in going to university, but there's been some material things that have changed, you know, and I think most people intuitively will go, well, there used to be, in the 60s, there was 4% of people who had degrees. Now there's 40%. There's just more of it. I think when there's more of stuff, it has slightly less value than it did, which would all be well and good if it didn't cost so much. It costs so much now. And, you know, there's been things like grade inflation, which I found fascinating. Between 2010 and 2020, the amount of firsts doubled. Now, are we cynics? Or do we? I know that students work very hard now, but do we think the amount of people capable of getting that truly doubled within the space of 10 years? Or is there something else going on? And so I've had a lot of whistleblowers in touch since with me privately saying that it's worse than I thought.
It turns out me not going might be the right thing to do.
Did you not go to university?
No.
Yeah, well, I mean...
He never mentions it, you know.
So I will talk about your book in a minute.
Well, that's one thing you always get. People have done well...
I could have been to university twice in the length of time it's taken you to write the thing.
That is very true.
Do you know, the two things you get is people that have done well...
You got a PhD as well.
But people that have done well for themselves out going to university always want to tell you. And the other one that gets me is when someone's on Graham Norton and they tell you about a meeting with a careers advisor who told them they'd never be the best actor in the world. You go, but they said that to about 10,000 people and they were right 9,999 times. But look, it's not just dumping on the higher education sector, well, not exclusively, but I think that in my sort of dream scenario, parents, grandparents will watch it and it will just open up a discussion with young people.
Well, it's fascinating. It's available on the iPlayer.
It's available on iPlayer right now.
Fabulous, fabulous. Loads of people still on the YouTube channel, astonishingly. Somebody says Felicity Buckham sounds like a Tory MP in Midsummer Murders whose son bumped off the vicar. And Lorraine says Tim Googling women whips sounds decidedly not safe for work.
I'm so glad somebody else did that joke. I really am, because I went and then my brain said, no, it's live radio.
Yeah, so there we are. There we are. Geoff, lovely to see you. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you're better.
Thanks for having me in.
And you can find his documentary and what's your website called? We have this argument every time. You say you don't need a website. You can just Google Geoff.
I'm one of these young funky types. Just hit me up on the socials, gang.
Hit me up on the socials.
That's the worst thing I've ever said.
I'll bet it isn't.
Geoff's Basic Bloke tour is... you're in Nottingham tonight?
Nottingham tonight, then they're both sold out. But yeah, then Crawley,
If
Reading.
you're free tonight, there's still tickets for me in Exeter. So, you know... There we are. Right, very good. Nice to see you, Geoff. Nice to see you, Tim. Nice to see you, Lara. What time will you be in people's inboxes?
3 p.m.
3 p.m. As if. Lovely stuff with your time subscription. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio in association with Revolut. You can download the free app. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
The Sunday Times Best Places to Live on Times Radio, sponsored by Halifax. This Sunday from 7:30, discover this year's most desirable places to call